Alright, let's do this. Today I gotta talk about aggregation in programming. Aggregation represents has a relationship between objects. One object contains another object as part of its structure, but the contained object or objects can exist independently. Basically speaking, an object can contain another object, but those objects can exist independently. What we'll do for this demonstration is create some book objects. Then we'll create a library object to contain the book objects. The books and the library can exist independently. That's aggregation. The library object will have book objects. We'll create a new class of book, file, new class, book. And a class for library, file, new class, library. Let's design our book objects. Let's say that books have a string of title and an integer for pages. You could include an author too if you would like, but I don't want this example to be too big. We'll need a constructor for our book objects. We'll set up the parameters. We need a string of title and an integer for pages. This.title equals title. This.pages equals pages. If you would like, you can set these attributes to be private, but that might be overkill for this lesson. Why don't we create a method to display the book's info? This method will return a string. We'll define a method to display info. We will display the info of this book. Let's return the following. Let's return this.title plus a space character plus this.pages and a string of the word pages. And I think I'm going to enclose the number of pages within a set of parentheses. You can also use a printf statement, if that's easier for you, but I want to try and keep this beginner friendly. Okay, that's good enough for the book class. Let's create a few book objects. We'll start with book 1. Book 1 equals a new book. But to construct a book, we have to pass in at least the following: a title and a number of pages. So I've picked out a few books already. Feel free to choose your own if you would rather choose different books. For the first book that I'll pick, I will pick The Fellowship of the Ring. This will be all one string. And the number of pages, at least according to Wikipedia, is 423. Then we'll create another book object. This will be book 2. Book 2 will be The Two Towers. The number of pages will be 352. And then book 3. Book 3 will be The Return of the King. The number of pages will be 416. All right, we have our independent book objects. Then what we'll do is stick them all within an array. We'll create an array of book objects named books equals, then within a set of curly braces, we can place our book objects within here. Book 1, book 2, book 3. We have an array of book objects. Before moving on, let's test the display info method of each of these books. So we'll need a print statement. Book 1 dot display info. So we should get book 1, The Fellowship of the Ring, 423 pages. I'm just going to make one change. I'll put the right parenthesis at the end. That's better. Let's display book 2. The Two Towers, 352 pages. Book 3. The Return of the King, 416 pages. You could also loop through this array using an enhanced for loop. The data type of each element in my array is book. For every book in my array of books, we'll print, take each book, call the display info method. And here's all the books that I have in my array: The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, The Return of the King. And we can delete this for loop. We no longer need it. Now we're going to create a library object. Our library object will contain our array of book objects, because libraries contain books. Going to our library class. What should libraries have? Let's say that our library should have a name. What's the name of the library? Maybe a year in which the library was established, int year. And libraries should contain book objects. We will create an array of book objects named books. We'll need a constructor for the library class. We'll need the following: a string for the name of the library, an integer for the year of the library, when was the library built, and an array of book objects. This.name equals name. This.year equals year. This.books equals the books that we receive, this array. All right, going back to our main Java file, this is where aggregation is going to come in. We will create a library object. Library equals new library. But we have to pass in the following as arguments to the constructor: a name for the library, a year for the library, and an array of book objects. So for the library, I'm going to say the NYC, the New York City Public Library. After a quick Google search, this library was built in the year 1897. Then we also need an array of book objects. I will pass in my array of book objects named books. This is aggregation. Our library object has book objects. Within the library class, let's also create a displayInfo method for the library. We'll make it a little bit different. This method won't return anything. Let's say the return type is void. We'll name this method displayInfo. We'll display the following information about this library. Let's output the following: this.year of the library, plus a space character, plus this.name. You can also use a printf statement if you would prefer to use that. I'm trying to keep this as beginner-friendly as possible. So let's test this. We will take our library object, call its displayInfo method. The 1897 New York City Public Library. Then within this method of displayInfo for the library, let's also list all the books that it has. This library has aggregated a whole bunch of book objects, so then we can display them or use them for something. Let's output the following. Let's output books available. Then we'll use an enhanced for loop. The data type of what we're iterating through is book objects. For every book in my array of books, take each book, call the books displayInfo method. And then we do have to print it using a print line statement, because this method returns a string. There we go. Let's test it. So after calling the displayInfo method of the library, we should display the information of the library, including its books, the 1897 New York City Public Library, and we display the books available, which are the array of books that we have created. So that's aggregation. It represents a has-a relationship between objects. Our library object has book objects within it. There's another similar concept called composition. With aggregation, if you were to delete this library class, for example, I'll delete it. Well, these book objects can exist independently outside of the library. The books aren't built into the library, so they can exist independently, which is a key difference compared to composition, which is the next topic we'll cover. And well, everybody, that is aggregation using Java.